Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome to my channel. Well, today we are finally going to be taking a look at a remake of a classic nostalgia Final Fantasy game from the mid-1990s. A game many gamers say shaped the JRPG landscape of that era, and even today, the Final Fantasy game that a lot of fans of JRPG say is their most favorite game in the world. Yes, today we are going to be taking a look at the remake of Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, I'm too broke to go out and buy the Final Fantasy VII remake, but remembering I had this in my Steam library and just wondering if all the hate of the remakes of 5 and 6 received from the Final Fantasy community was worth it, I decided to play through it and see. And I guess I should set up my history with Final Fantasy VI. I don't have any kind of nostalgia attachment to the original Super Nintendo game. I played the PS1 version of 6 probably sometime around 2006 when I was around 25 years old, and I thought it was okay. I have played a little bit of the SNES version on the SNES Mini, but not enough to really go through and quote-unquote say I've experienced the original version of the game. Does this make me uniquely qualified to judge this game? No, not really, but I'm going to give you my opinion on it anyways. We're going to start with the graphics first, since it is the elephant in the room when it comes to these remakes, and it's what I want to talk about first. Okay, first off, like I said before, this is a remake. This isn't Chrono Trigger, where they put in the world's worst smoothing filter on it and called it high definition. Square Enix actually took the time to redo the sprites and the artwork in the game to make it look less pixelated and look better on HD screens. If only they took the time to do it right. Unlike other HD games that I have played recently, like the Phoenix Wright trilogy, which redrew over the original artwork so the game's assets still look the same, just like pixelated, the makers here tried to redo the artwork, and the end results are a mixed bag. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some good things. The character portraits now look top-notch and way better than their old washout pixelated form. The towns and environments look even lusher, and there are more details to them. And even the characters themselves sport a lot more noticeable details in the way they move and even animate. One of the things I loved about this is how they used some 3D elements for when you're flying in your airship. Oh, don't get me wrong, it still looks like the SNES Mode 7, but now towns and towers now actually pop out at you and are now in 3D, and the end results are a lot better than they were on the SNES, where some of the details were left a little flat. So, why all the hatred? Well, how do I describe what I did when I first saw these designs for the characters that are in this game? Yeah, that about sums up how I feel. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not the worst, but it's far from the best. You see, unlike Final Fantasy 4 and 5, which had smaller sprites that enlarging and adding in more detail was a good idea, 6 already had large sprites, and instead of just drawing over them to make them look better, a la Phoenix Wright, they redrew and completely redid them, and they didn't do a good job preserving the way the game looked and felt. They're now a lot thinner than they used to be. The faces don't look quite right. Instead, they look deformed and a bit cutesy, and the worst part may just be the colors they use, and they just don't look right. It's too bright, too smooth. And the thing is, Final Fantasy VI happens in a very gritty world. It's a steampunk world at first, going through industrialization. It needs to have a bit of a gritty color design. Instead, we get these super smooth and super bright characters. I don't blame people thinking that the game was ran through the same type of filter as Chrono Trigger, rather than realizing these are different sprites. The way they're put together is just kind of off-putting. Which is a shame. I kind of like the fact that it's not pixelated and the characters and the colors are a bit smoother, but they don't need to be this smooth, and just the fact that the character designs seem to stray too far away from the original just doesn't help. Again, like I said, it's not the worst, but it's not the best. And if Square Enix does ever decide to redo this game again, I hope they pay more attention to the way the SNES sprites were done and just do a better job remaking it. Oh, and as far as the battle system and the parts that scream that this is a mobile phone part, I really honestly quite didn't mind it. I actually kind of like these sliding tiles and picking my choices from a smaller menu. I quite honestly thought the whole system was streamlined and easier to use than the original version, and quite honestly thought it was a huge plus overall. The story is considered to be one of the best in Final Fantasy. Is it? Well, it does have several good moments. The game's opening moments involves a group of soldiers from the evil empire that wants to, of course, conquer the world, invading a northern town in the mountains with a young girl named Terra who can use magic and is equipped with a mind control device. Terra, of course, is our main character and hero of the story. Anyways, after the soldiers meet a strange creature trapped in the ice, it attacks them, and Terra gets knocked unconscious and free of the mind control device. But since the citizens of the town are angry at her, she has to flee with the help of a thief named Locked, who is our hero and main character for the story. The two escape southward to the kingdom of Figaro, where they meet King Edgar, who of course is our hero and main character for the story. We also meet the main villain of our story, Kefka. And what can I really say about this guy other than he's an absolute clown? And by the way, I mean that more in the vein of Pennywise and less Bozo the Clown. Anyways, I will get into a bit more analysis about him later. Anyways, after running into him causes the group to flee for their lives from Edgar's castle, the story gets a little crazy as more and more characters get introduced. We get Shadow the Assassin for hire, Edgar's brother Sabin, who obviously was meant to crash in on the Street Fighter craze in the 90s because all his moves require crazy button mashes in order to pull off, but they're worth learning because he's got an insane attack power. An elderly speaking British samurai Sheehan, and last but not least, during a segment of the game where the group has to split up and we get to choose what chapter we want to play, one of the chapters has Locke saving an enemy general named Celeste, who, you guessed it, is the main character and hero of the game's story. Well, second half. Yeah, you can't tell the game has no main character. Rather, it just shows a group of people who have different reasons to get to a similar goal, and that is freeing the world from an evil empire. With that said, some characters can share the main character role more than others. Celeste, Locke, Terra, and Edgar all have important moments that move the plot forward. They have arcs that are important to the story, like, for example, this game's iconic opera scene, for instance. The rest of them really don't. That's not to say they don't have side quests for them to uncover more about them, and that these side events don't last the rest of the game and aren't interesting. Xion, for example, loses his kingdom and his whole family and has to deal with the grief and the guilt, and we still see him dealing with it during the game's second half. But anyways, the main plot is about taking down that evil empire, and to do that it means uncovering the secret of Terra's past and why she can use magic. But, like in all JRPGs, once we have all these things and after a few plot twists and betrayal, we will confront the evil empire and save the world at the last moment. Or maybe not. Yeah, not to spoil too much, but around the halfway point, the clown manages to seize ultimate power and pretty much sends the world to hell in a handbasket. You start up on the second half as Celeste, out to find what happened to the others a year later, track them all down, and recruit them once again to take down Kefka once and for all. And speaking about Kefka, why is he ranked so high on everybody's favorite Final Fantasy villain list? I mean, if the game has no hero, then how can the villain be so good? Well, it has to do that he is the antithesis of all the hero's journey. You see, most of the game's characters have lost something, but through that loss have found something greater than before. Edgar lost his freedom when he had to become king, but he finds happiness in caring for his people and protecting them in the second half of this game. and protecting his younger brother. Locke feels guilty about the death of a former love, but finds a better love in Celeste. Tara loses her memory and struggles with her humanity, but finds it again in the second half when she takes in a village full of orphans. Setzer here, who is a gambler in Twilight's Town, reigning struggle champion, lost his love, but again finds purpose when the heroes go knocking on his door, asking for help against the Empire. The list goes on and on, with each person having lost something, but realizing they have something even more important to fight for. Kefka, on the other hand, he is something that stands in the way of each character's new growth and realization. He is nihilism, all wrapped up in a clown suit. If you're destined to lose everything, then why try to pick up the pieces and rebuild? Why look for something new to replace what you've lost and move on with your life if you might lose that new thing too? So why have anything important to you? And he is willing to destroy the whole world to prove his point, and that's just his motivations. To get there, he is willing to do some really twisted stuff. Oh, don't get me wrong, when he's first introduced, you almost think he's a comic villain and not very high on the threat level. But it isn't long into the game when he murders an entire village by poisoning their water supply. Every time you hear that maniacal laugh, you know trouble, and Kefka isn't too far behind, and you never know when this homicidal clown is going to off someone. He is truly a great villain, and yes, I would say he's better than Sephiroth, whose main motivation came out. He found out he was half alien, and for some reason that just decided to turn him against destroying the world or something like that. Kefka's fully motivated, he's fully twisted, he's got a lot of really great scenes. So yeah, I put him as a better villain than Sephiroth, hands down. So, what's a good way to describe the gameplay in this classic game? A game that oftentimes goes right alongside the likes of Chrono Trigger when talking about 16-bit RPGs. What's one word I could use to describe this juggernaut of a JRPG? I know the perfect word to use. Broken. Whoa, easy there, folks. Just because the gameplay is broken doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. Just like Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep is a tad bit broken, and that makes it even more enjoyable, so is Final Fantasy VI. It has to do with how OP the magic is, and it's easy it is to get later in the game. And if you don't believe me that this game is broken, here's me delivering an easy end of the game smack down to the clown. So, what do I mean by the magic is broken? Well, for the first quarter of the game, you only have two mage characters, Celeste and Tara, and the game very much wants you to learn and use the abilities unique to each character. Sabin has his blitz attack, Edgar can use tools, Xian has his Bushido, which takes freaking forever to do, but can deliver some really powerful techniques, and the game stays somewhat balanced throughout this time, making you sure you understand and use every character's special ability to win battles and overcome bosses. Then you meet the Espers and get something called Magicite. Yeah, Magicite is what lets you summon in this game. Each Esper can be summoned once per battle, and a lot of the high power ones like Bahamut can take quite a bit of MP. So it's not really the fact that you can summon that breaks the game. So what does? Simple. Each summon teaches a person how to use magic permanently, even if that person is not a mage or a magic caster. Granted, magic done by a non-caster like Sabin isn't usually as powerful as, say, one that's done by Tara. Most magicite spells are still fairly powerful. Just collecting a small handful of the game's more powerful magicite and finding a good place to grind for an hour or two can lead you to having several teams with over-the-top powerful magic like Ultima, Holy, Flare, and Meteor, easy to obtain with just a few side quests. So yeah, to say the game's battle system is broken and not overly balanced is an understatement. And before anyone goes that using all this magic, doesn't it drain your MP down really fast? And the answer is yes, but another spell called Osmos, which you gained early on from the Sheba summons, makes it easy to refill. Just use it on pretty much any enemy and you can refill most of your magic right away, making even having to use those pesky ethers and elixirs a waste of time. And if you're wondering about equipping and being able to afford to pay weapons for such a large and diverse cast of characters, don't. The money awarded from even the smallest battles are so huge that I never even came close to running short of the money or had to grind in order to buy equipment. My only complaint that makes this game a tad bit harder or more annoying might just have to do with an item called sprint shoes. Basically, you have to have this item equipped on at least one of your party if you want to move faster than a freaking snail. So the game is a bit broken and way too easy to make yourself so OP that even Lena Inverse would be jealous. What about exploration and side quests? Well, I have some really good news in this game in that it's even more open than Chrono Trigger, or at least during its second act. Yeah, its first act is pretty linear, almost coming close to Final Fantasy IV levels. A few areas give you a choice of freedom as you're allowed to wander around a section of the world map, and you do get an airship towards the end of the first act, but there's very little to do except to find new places to grind. But that second half, after the World of Ruin, you basically have a complete freedom after a few events with Celeste to get said airship back, and the game opens up so much that it feels like a 16-bit Zelda Breath of the Wild. You can go anywhere in the game. Almost every area has some sort of secret to learn or mysteries to solve to recruit a character back into the team or to get a summon that will teach you some more of that overpowerful magic. The game encourages you to go everywhere, some places more than once to get all the characters back. There are just a lot of side quests available to help end each character's story arc, and 90% of this is optional. No joke, you can get to Kefka's tower right away after you get the airship. You only need to recruit Edgar and Setzer back to your lineup in order to take on Kefka. No, it's a lot easier to get them all back into your team and to get all the espers you can so you can get all your magic powered up, but you can go right to the ending at any time and still stand a chance at beating this game. The second half is just a really fun play and to explore to find out what's changed and what you can get from each area. It's a real treat. Overall, I really enjoyed the gameplay in this game, despite some over-the-top and sometimes hilarious flaws. The music in this game is really good. There are plenty of tunes that get used in Final Fantasy VII, especially the more haunting or disturbing tunes get used in both games. But it's the game's overworld theme for the first half, which is just a remix of the theme used for Terra, is still haunting and just gorgeous to listen to. It's full of mystery, and like I said, it has kind of this eerie, haunting feeling to it. While the World of Ruin has this very desolate sound with a wind sound effect blowing in the background. Every theme and every place has some great music in it. Some of the finest on the SNES when it comes to RPGs is featured here. Is Final Fantasy VI the best Final Fantasy game ever? The answer to that is no. It's kind of broken and it's just way too easy to make your characters overpowered. But it does give you a lot of freedom towards the end of the game, and there's just so much to do in the World of Ruin that it kind of makes up for the shortfalls. As far as this version goes, would I recommend it? Well, yes and no, kind of. The characters' designs are just way too off to be considered good, so I recommend getting something more closer to the original version if you have a system that can have access to it, like a PlayStation 3 for example. With that said, this HD version is usually only $15. It's available on Steam for PC or your mobile phone, and since most people watching this will have a smartphone, you can pick this game up easily, and despite not being a perfect version, it is still fun and worth trying. This is Tommy the Game Master thanking you for watching this video. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below.